Urijah Faber's on the show. How's it going, Urijah?
Going good. Just as you saw, a handful of kids a moment ago, but we were behind closed doors.
Yeah, I'm glad I hit
So
record a little bit on that. We got some outtakes with Callie and Rome.
it's okay.
I get one for your shirt.
It's okay.
The family man that you are, in addition to all the other things that you do.
Yeah, today especially, they're in the gym. I get to bring them with me some days. So I told Callie she could sit with me during this, but she had to be quiet. So
Yeah,
that was just talk just as much, but just whisper.
yeah, that
And I'm
was it.
like,
That was the exact. That's the kid's way of doing it. Need to be quiet,
yeah,
so just like that's the green light to just go. I'm glad we have a little bit of time. I want to get right to the subject of the day, Uriah, and it's like when I went to interview you before you came back and fought Ricky Simone. Right, we did that interview in your dining room for the
yeah,
UFC. And one thing I noticed as I'm hanging out in the front of your house, I looked at the bookshelves. You have a lot of business books. You have a
yeah.
lot of business books on the shelves, and I just immediately noticed that. Where did you get your entrepreneurial mind or spirit or whatever you want to call it?
Um, you know, I'm not exactly sure. I think being a guy that wants to follow my passion, I had to be creative to be able to fund my own fight career at the beginning, especially in 2003 when I started fighting. It was mixed martial arts was still illegal in California. It was only on Indian reservations. When you did fight, it was a couple $100. You could sell T-shirts or whatever. And I was also coaching wrestling at UC Davis, so I was literally getting paid. I think for salary I was like $7,000 a year
Yeah.
for 10 months full time, and that's well below the poverty line at the time, even then in 2003. So I was busting tables. I started a business coaching kids and um, selling T-shirts. Started selling alpha male clothing. I did a bunch of different little business deals that I didn't even realize what I was doing at the time. I had a good friend, Mark Manfreda. He got kind of a license for me where he made alpha male football gear and he was selling it, and I got my own little cut, which is like a almost like a licensing deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all sorts of stuff, just figuring it out. I was doing kids wrestling clinics and um, you know, bussing tables and then started fighting also. And with the fighting, I was selling tickets. I would sell tickets and collect money right up to the day of the fight, and get my percentage of the tickets, and then do the math, hand over the rest to the promoter. So I was having to hustle from the get go to stay in the game, really.
Was it one
Otherwise,
of those Yeah. Was it one of those things where you were a businessman before you even were trying to be one or knew that you were one? It sounds like you almost like fell into it just trying to make ends meet.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I have good examples. I mean, my dad is you know not a crazy accomplished businessman, but he always made his own schedule. He was a
Mhm.
carpenter by trade, a framer by trade, and then was a general contractor. So he was able to be on a project and then finish the project and then look for another project. So that was, I kind of saw that his lifestyle was somewhat like that. He was working a lot, but on his own terms. And then my mom, same thing. I think uh, my big eye opener was when we opened our own little family business. It was a tiny little coffee shop, and my stepdad at the time had been working with the city of Roseville, like wearing the yellow shirts and like doing that kind of stuff. And then my
Mhm.
mom worked at Nordstrom, and she just had my sister who is you know 13 years younger than I was, and we did this family business. It took us like a year and a half to open this tiny little coffee shop, which is like 400 square feet, but it was like deluxe. We had like
Yeah.
best stuff, and we were in there working late at night, even on school nights, and getting up early, and so I've had some good examples.
Why did you continue to chase fighting when it was illegal where you were?
Oh, just because it sounded like fun. I mean, it was a passion thing, and I'm all about doing passionate things. I'm never worried about the paycheck, and it's always about like what I like to do. And
Yeah.
I just graduated college wrestling, and I bought a ticket to watch one of my high school buddies fight. Um, and I didn't get out I went and saw his fight. Then another one of my high school buddies fought, and um, he fought Herb Dean actually, and my
No.
guy had no, yeah, he fought Herb Dean, and my guy had no background at all training. He just wanted to
Mhm.
get in a fight. He
Right.
played football for a lineman and didn't know what he's doing. And I was in college still wrestling, and so I was like, man, this looks like fun. So as soon as I graduated, I took a fight like a month after.
Yeah. Wow. Now, were you because when I've talked to Joe Benavidez, and fighting for guys of your era was one of those things where for so many people they didn't have the mind big enough to think it could be a career. It's like I'm going to get into fights almost as like a hobby. Might make a couple $100, but really you're losing out on the deal. It's kind of a paid for hobby. Um, for you, like, what did you think about MMA as a career in the early days? Did you think it was possible? Is that something that you were chasing?
Yeah, I did. And I mean, kind of a visionary on that front, I guess, especially for the smaller guys, but more just, a little delusional. I also was because of my wrestling pedigree and friendships and whatnot, I was able to be in contact with guys that were career fighters. Randy Couture was a guy that was a mentor of mine at the very beginning. He used to come down to Sacramento and do some camps. Frank Trigg was a guy that I got to be in contact with at a very young age. Rampage Jackson, um, Tito Ortiz, uh, you know, even Chuck Liddell. We had mutual friends from the wrestling world, and he was at Cal Poly and UC Davis. So it wasn't like so far fetched. I mean, the far fetched part was actually the fact that I was 133 pounds and the lightest weight class was 170 pounds, but in the UFC, and they only had 3 events a year versus what they have
Right.
now. So it wasn't like I didn't see it as no career. It just wasn't very likely in retrospect. But I was just hyped on the journey and believed I was going to make it.
Did you was it what were the goals? Like, what were your goals as a fighter back then?
Well, at the time, because there was no UFC for us, and really Pride was not not an option for me either. I just got my first computer that a sponsor had like let me have his old computer, and um there was like a ranking, like I just put like MMA rankings and on the internet, and just some rankings came up. So my goals at the time was to beat all the people in front of me in the rankings, world rankings, and I think it was Kid Yamamoto because I was fighting 145 pounds. There was no 33
Mhm.
or 35 time. So it was like Gilbert Melendez. There's a guy, Pequeño Noguera. There was Kid Yamamoto. Those are like three big names that I was like, all right, these guys are ranked in the world. And I was going around trying to collect belts. So I got the Gladiator Challenge belt first, King of the Cage. I went and fought where Ivan Menjivar and Mark Hominick were out in TKO in Canada. I fought in a ice skating rink there against Ivan Menjivar, and
Yeah.
fought Ivan for his and and I was end up getting the WEC belt. I beat a guy Cole Escovedo who fought in the UFC as well, and kind of unified the lighter weight belts. So I was just trying to collect belts and prove that I was the best guy on the planet.
Yeah. And so when did it become, because I feel like you were an early adopter of making it a business as well. It's one thing to make it your career, but to open your
Yeah.
gym, to start like having that vision, when did that come into play for you?
Well, like I said, the alpha male thing, I was a human development major in college, and I learned about what alpha male was in nature, and I liked I liked the idea of it. It was
Yeah.
not just about size and prowess. It was, there's alpha males in everything. And um, And so I like that name, Alpha Male. I talked to Randy Couture about it. And he goes, "Oh, that's a good one." Cause there was all these, there was like, you know, submit, and there was tap out, and there's all these
Right.
clothing lines. So I made Alpha Male off the bat, and I was like, started slanging those shirts and saw the business there because I was having success with it. Like I was selling a lot, and then I was going around to all these different gyms, and I needed a gym that was like a unifying place. I would go here for kickboxing, here for jiu-jitsu,
Right.
here for this in 2004, 2005. And I had a buddy that was hired, the guy, Tyrone Glover. He was a high school friend that was the first guy I went and watched fight. And he got hired to go work at a gym called City Boxing out in San Diego. And I went and visited him and saw City Boxing. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. It was like exactly what I wanted. And so I found uh, a guy, a friend of a friend, who I started doing some privates for, and asked if I ever thought about doing a gym. And I was like, yeah. So he became my investor. I was a product, and that was 2005. And I didn't really know I
Wow.
was doing that. He was like, hey,
Yeah.
you know, I, and then I started this team. I was recruiting my buddies. Danny Castillo, we've been buddies since 1995. We
Uh-huh.
wrestled on all-star teams together and actually against each other in freestyle. And, we're buddies. And so I'd be like, bro, you need to come do this. He was working a desk job, and we're talking crap over MySpace, and like basically recruited him. Scotty Jorgensen recruited him. Mark recruited him. Um, Started grabbing all my guys I knew were badasses and was like, this is the jam, dude. I do whatever I want all day. I mean, that happened to be a lot of hard work, but that's what I wanted to do. And so
Yeah.
I had all of a sudden a team, a gym, and a clothing line and management all kind of at the same time. I was a manager of a lot of these fighters before anybody knew who I was. I mean, we were managing Chael Sonnen, Anthony Pettis, uh, you know, Scotty Jorgensen, all these, we had a big management company that I started like right around the same time as I started the gym. So I had all that stuff going, and I didn't really think of it like it was business. I was just filling needs, really.
Yeah. That's crazy, Uriah, because I would have sat here and if somebody asked me how you did it, I would have said, oh, it was probably a pretty calculated thing. You probably thought bigger than other people that your MMA career could be a career and that you could turn it into a bigger business. But it sounds like the opposite. It sounds like you were just neck deep in this thing that you love to do. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, these business opportunities came to you because of it.
Yeah, that's more of it. And also, I mean, the team, that always cost me money. I was paying for everything. I, like
Yeah.
the guys
Yeah.
at the gym at first, especially, and I was paying Master Tong myself because I was the only one that was actually making a living doing it, and he was coaching everybody, and and then I'd have jobs for the guys. I bought my first house, and filled it up with friends. Like that was my first real estate thing. I bought a house when it was before the economy crashed in 2005, and so I
Hmm.
bought a house that was open and anybody could get a loan. And I had one of my roommates in college was doing loans. Michael Yosef from Egypt, and he was like, "Bro, I can get you a loan." And I'm like, "Really?" I go, "I don't really have any money." He's like, "That's not a problem." I'm like, "I get $7,000." And I've been coaching here, and I work wrestling camps in this summer. And he's like, not a problem, not a problem. And he got me a loan for a $300,000 house, and I have Jack Diddley. That's the reason the economy crashed. But
Yeah, exactly.
I
I was
kept
talking
that
about
going.
that this morning with somebody. It's just like you didn't have to have
Yeah,
any proven income to get loans for these big houses.
yeah. Income loan stated. How much you make? I make about this much. Okay, what's your business? I go, well, you need to have 2-year work history. Well, I started a business called Top Line Coaching. Oh, that was my first business actually. That I started when I was a coach at UC Davis,
Okay.
TLC, and I was camps under my coach's wrestling camps. He let me run through that business name, and so then it was, my buddy's like, "Oh, you have to have a 2-year work history." I go, "Well, I have this business. It's like money go through it. And he's like, somehow, because went to school to be a teacher and I started business teaching, he used the teaching education part as part of my 2-year work history. Like, who knows what they're doing? Anybody could get a friggin' loan. So I got my first loan, moved in all my buddies, Matt Sanchez, who's an entrepreneur now and a good friend of mine, and was my nemesis during college. We wrestled at different schools. He moved in. Dustin Akbari, who's still teaching at my gym today, he moved in. He was a teenager at the time. Then more and more people come. TJ Dillashaw lives in that block, and Chad Mendez lives in the block, and Danny Castillo and Justin Buckles, and I mean the name goes on. I bought the first house, had a little more success. Bought the second house with a buddy. Bought the house next door to that. He bought this house over here. My other buddy bought a house, and we had like a block of houses.
Yeah.
And it wasn't I was booming. I was just surviving.
Yeah. You just, but you were surviving on kind of, again, like something that you love to do. And like, it's like what you wanted to spend all your time on anyways. What's the lesson, Urijah, when you look back on those days and all the things that you did and things that you learned kind of accidentally?
Well, I think probably the biggest lesson, especially if you're an entrepreneur that's listening to this, 100% is just having zero fear. Like, I just had no like pullback on trying to do something. I'm like, oh shit, like I like that name. Oh, I'm gonna do a clothing line. Okay, let me go after it. Like, I didn't care if anybody like, well, that's a dumb name, or or like I didn't hear any naysayers and listen to them. Didn't consider it. Just was fearless. Just like, let's go. And that was for everything. A little too much probably, because I would do this and do that, and but I'm like, oh, management. Well, yeah. Well, I'll just make my own management company. I'll make my own gym. I'll do this. I'll do that. Like, fearless.
Yeah.
And that's an entrepreneur's journey,
Yeah.
and it's also difficult.
Right.
So, I mean, the building of that first gym. My uncle Danny was doing me a solid. He was a commercial plumber out of Santa Barbara, and he came and was doing all this work for like dirt cheap for me and everything. And I was going to, get him later. And I somehow left the back sliding door up on our first location, and someone went in, stole his truck and all his tools for his business. That was just a kick in the gut. I had to buy him all new stuff because I felt terrible, and like it just took the wind out of his sails. And you have these little hiccups that you just don't see in business, and you just got to just go pop right back in.
Now, when you're
I was fearless.
Yeah, when you're going all in fearless like that, I think you bring up a good point, because a lot of people would have an idea and then they start thinking of reasons why it won't work. And you were probably thinking the opposite of reasons why it would work, or not even thinking of reasons why it wouldn't work at all. But you're gonna have those downs along the way. Like, is something that you learned, is it safe to say that the more chances you take, like, some things are going to go wrong? Do they outweigh the good things? Or is it like you pile up enough good things, of course some things are going to dip a little bit, take the risks?
Dude, 100% stuff's going to go haywire. And it's not, once it runs smoothly, it's not going to stay running smoothly. It's, the gym now, that was 2006, I think, when we opened the gym. 2005 is probably when I started opening the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And the gym is now still around. It's 2023.
Right.
And I almost had to close down my gym theoretically, after retirement. It was just sucking money. It was literally like it was a money pit. It was amazing. It was awesome. I had a poor partner at the time who was poor leadership, bad decisions. And then he like turned and sued me, right after we're doing all this revenue. And I'm like, well, how come we're doing this much revenue? Where's the money? And it was just like over hiring and overstaffing and doing this and doing too much money here, and just being careless because I wasn't have my eye on it. And next thing you know, I'm in this big hole, and it was a struggle. This is 2017,
16, 17. Yeah.
and I'm just blowing through money, and had to stick it out and turn the thing around. But it was, scary times. 13 years after or 10 years after the beginning of this thing,
Yeah.
So there's always struggles, and like you take the team for example. There's a time where the Dwayne Legwood TJ Dillashaw thing was like front and center of everything that's going on, and there's always these ebbs and flows in businesses and life that you just have to go, all right, water off a duck's back. The guys make fun of me because I always say that after a loss, water off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Danny
Yeah.
and that.
Now, why is it still worth it now that the innocence is gone for you?
I still really enjoy, and believe it or not, and some people will get this and some people won't. I could care less about money. I don't look at my bank accounts. I don't look at like monthly checks coming in. And that's not the smartest way to operate. I have a team of people that I trust, people that I really trust around me. Some of my best friends, that I trust with that kind of stuff. And they'll call me if something's going bad, like, hey, you need to slow down the spending. You need to get some more money. You need to do this. You need to do that. Then I have to go, okay, now it's back to, let me go fund me living the dream, because I want to live the dream. I want to.
Yeah.
So, and I really, really enjoy building things that are awesome and cool. You come into my gym, like, you're going to be, everybody that walks in there is like, whoa, I've never seen a gym like this. The gym is like, it's like got all sorts of cool little things that are different than most gyms. The way the team is run has been from leadership and about positivity and building each other up. That's different than a lot of places. There's a real camaraderie there. There's a lot of things that are unique. My Kali Acai that I'm about to launch, like, my daughter's at the forefront. Like, I just envision her giving a big speech when this company goes big, and
Yeah.
that's awesome and cool. I'm not worried about the dollar. That is allowing me to do more fun, creative stuff, which is a hard thing but some people's passion is, I had a business partner, really successful, far more successful than I am in business when it comes to dollars. And we started a small company together. He sold a big company for $155 million. And we started a small company together, and that didn't pan out in the long run. And he was getting notifications to his phone every single time something would sell, like a little item, a $20, $30 item. And he'd like, oh, got a sale. I'm like, who cares?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
He's millions and millions of dollars in the bank, and he's celebrating a $30 sale for himself. That's part of what he liked to see. So it's just kind of a, and one of those things that, like, is different for everybody. But I like creating, not necessarily like counting dollars.
Yeah. Is it something where, like, you are okay? Sometimes a scary thing for me is to leverage your assets to pay and buy more. Not in terms of material things necessarily, but if you want to invest in a business, okay, we could tap the house for this much money to invest in this and stuff. Is that like your personality or what you're talking about, where you're like, I don't care about the numbers in my bank account. I just care about the projects that I have going on. And, like, if it all comes crumbling down, I still got my family and we can figure it out. Is that like how you operate?
Yes, minus the all come crumbling down, because I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not
that's like the worst case scenario if the whole world burns down in that, but it's unlikely to, because most of the time, if you keep an optimistic viewpoint on it, then things are going to work out. Look at how they're working out for you. They're going well.
And I've gone without. That's another thing. I've gone without for a long time, for a long, long time. During college, after college, in this fight career, when I had enough money to go big, I was more about the community than I was like, let me get myself this thing,
Yeah.
It was like I always had that community, fighters and everything else. It wasn't like, all right, let me sell this and upgrade to my mansion. It was, I saved my little house with my 2 rooms, far into my career, and built something that was cooler. I know how to live below my means, which makes it easy.
Yeah.
But the leveraging thing is a great lesson. I just sent this clip that my mom sent me, because I've been telling her about this mentality, which she gets. I learned a lot from her, but just telling her to, like, don't be afraid to do this or do that. So then I sent it to Clay Guida, Andre Feely, I think maybe Chad Mendez, and someone else, and just had the discussion. And Clay, for example, I just spoke with them about it 2 days ago. I was like, oh, how crazy is it? He's showing me this house that he wants to buy now. Clay was the quintessential, I want zero debt guy, which makes sense because he's such a relaxed. And so he's like, bro, I owe no money. He goes, I bought a house from my parents in Florida, which he got a great deal for, cash. I have my place in Chicago, my humble spot. That's my hometown thing. Bought that cash. That's where he lives. You know, he's got a bag in my garage for years. He has the bags in New Mexico, Chicago, Florida, wherever. In his motorhome, going and having fun. And that was the old Clay. And over the last couple of years, he's teamed up with Chad Mendez. They do this Fins and Feathers for Chad and
Gills and Thrills.
Clay. Yeah, and Clay bought his first house with a loan, and then he bought another one with a loan, and now he's like understands leveraging and how it works. He's like, bro, I just didn't understand, but now he's like off and running and understanding how that stuff works. And I told him, my neighbor, who's a big mentor of mine and one of the most humble guys ever, I asked him, because he's extremely successful, like very high level, you know, vacation homes and that kind of stuff, and asked him like what the secret was. And he said, you can't be afraid to get leveraged. He's like, I have $1 billion in debt. And that's great. He goes, this could all come crumbling down tomorrow. Of course it would. He's so methodical with his stuff, but he's like, I have all this debt. And I'm like, okay. And so it's a fine line by being a moron and understanding how to leverage the system. I'm kind
of like Clay in that
I read Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Rich Dad Poor Dad. You cut out there for a second. Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's the whole thing. It's like leveraging and you know, doing everything you need to do to like maximize what you have available and take advantage of what they'll give you.
There's other ways to go about creating your ideal life. He's doing great. Has a boat, has a house he wants. He's had a great job, and he's got his retirement set up, and he's happy also. And he's come to me and been like, hey man, what should I do with the money, blah, blah. Like, my advice is always really.
Thanks so much for cutting some time out, Urijah, to talk about this. I wanted to pick your brain on that, because I think you're very different than a lot of people in the MMA world in terms of maybe not the vision that you had, but the vision that you have realized based on your approach and all the different balls that you juggle from a business standpoint, a fighting standpoint. It's cool, man.
I appreciate it, man. Yep. Living on the edge.
There you go. It's a good place to be. I'll try to meet you there someday.
Thanks for watching Fitz Nation on the UFC Fight Pass YouTube channel. You know, my bosses would love it if you hit that UFC Fight Pass logo and subscribe to the channel. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.